Maybe you've been involved in a Microsoft 365 migration, optimizing your environment, maybe prepping for Copilot, and then you've probably heard the name ShareGate. IT rarely gets the spotlight, but everything runs on what they build. Mergers, restructures, tenant sprawl, IT figures it out as they handle everything from migrating data from tenant to tenant to making sure that AI and Copilot is ready to be rolled out securely and responsibly. They make chaos feel like business as usual. And ShareGate? It's the sidekick that helps them do it. ShareGate is an out-of-the-box tool that simplifies the chaos that IT faces. Assess, migrate, optimize. It's that simple. Now, whether it's tenant to tenant, Microsoft Exchange, Google to M365, or getting visibility on your data hygiene in order to prep for Copilot rollouts, ShareGate helps IT migrate quickly, cleanly, and with minimal drama. Go to sharegate.com. It's one tool, fast migrations, and Copilot ready. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hanselminutes. Today I'm talking with Jasmine Lawrence Campbell. She is a technical product manager at Escape in robotics. She's worked at companies like Microsoft and NVIDIA. She has both a bachelor's from Georgia Institute of Technology and a master's from University of Washington. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Man, I just tell you, when I look at people's LinkedIn and they're just so epic, I just feel bad about my own LinkedIn. You've done so much.
No, don't feel bad, Scott. You'll measure up to me one day.
One day I'll get on your level.
Honestly, you're a role model for me. I love what you do to advocate for developers.
Oh, well, that's very sweet. I appreciate that. I love that you are not only quietly building and quietly grinding, but then when you do something, you go out and you talk about it and you tell people about it, and then you bring them in and you help them as well. You lift up other people, and I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think a lot of my vision can't be accomplished by just me and what I'm able to carry on my shoulders. So if I can inspire other people to get involved, leverage their skills, or support other people who want to be a part of the work, that is what I will do.
Mm-hmm. And you won't stop, because I think, I'm trying to remember when I met you, but you have started a non-technical company and led it, and you can buy Eden Body Works products in stores today, even still. But then you are also you've been a roboticist, and you've been an AI ML expert since before everyone was talking about it.
Before it was cool, yeah. I'm going to take that for sure.
Did you feel like when AI became a thing that people had in their mouths, you were like, hey, now, I told y'all a decade ago?
No, I'm not a futurist. Have been trying to navigate my career and figuring out where the money is going to go. Because one of the challenges for me as I started my career in robotics was that I wasn't passionate about manufacturing. I wasn't passionate about optimizing warehouses, but that's where a lot of the impact was happening. I'm excited to see today's innovations because it's really driving an investment in vertical AI or single purpose robotics, if I can call it that. Even though there's even more excitement around general AI or general artificial intelligence. But for me, it's been really finding an organization that's committed to doing something that we can actually productize. Because as you mentioned in my background, I'm used to getting things into the hands of customers and making sure the experiences are wholesome and inclusive.
Yeah. You said something that I want to start with, because I think it's a great way to understand, because most people think about robots. They think about Will Smith, iRobot. They think about promises that billionaires have made about robots, and they want a Rosie the robot to fold their clothes, right? I think about the stuff that I dislike the most. It's the dishwasher and it's the folding the clothes. But you said single purpose robots. Yeah. And that feels like, from a manufacturing perspective, maybe this is an overstatement, but a solved problem. I've seen robots move at speed, pick and placing stuff, but I still can't get one in my house to fold my laundry.
Yeah, that's a very great question. Thank you so much for this softball. So in the factories, there are very constrained environments, right, that are not dynamic at all. There are strict boundaries and regulations around how humans and robots come into contact or interact with each other or not in these environments. You want a robot in your home that can adapt to your home every single day. And, your kids are going to leave their shoes one place in one day, Rug's going to be in a visit another day. And so it's a combination of it's not the shortage of the capability of the robot to do it, but to do it in a dynamic and adaptive way that is honestly only made possible by machine learning and a combination of human in the loop, right? we've seen, I recently read an article about Roombas, right? They've been in the market for 20 years even, and they're still having challenges with object detection, where the robot is designed for its single purpose of cleaning the floor, and it will see some dog poop on the rug and say, I should clean that. And because it's not effective at cleaning that, you'll have more poop in your house than you ever wanted. So it's really figuring out how do you make this thing the best it can at its job. Now, if this Roomba also had to fold your laundry and put your shoes away and dust your countertops, the complexity of the problem really raises. So it's been really exciting for me to try and find a place where we can fully investigate a use case and make it the best that it can be, and then offer that globally.
I feel like let's pretend I'm a lay person and I'll speak on behalf of like non-technical parent. Like, I've got my phone I'm holding up here, right? And it's 12 million times more powerful than my Commodore 64 that I got when I started. But my Roomba, and I'm not talking about Roomba, the company, I love you all. I'm talking about Roomba like Kleenex. It's just a generic word for the disc that walks around my house. My Roomba is dumb as hell, right? It's just dumb. And it was dumb when it was bouncing around randomly. And now it has LiDAR and radar and cameras, and it's still dumb. Help me understand why my phone is so powerful and my Roomba is so dumb.
That is a great question. That is a great question. I don't know. I have to put my like speculative product hat on. I think, like I said, it's the variance of the different environments. I don't know why it's not smarter yet. It's probably older algorithms. And honestly, I'm not sure if every person is your Roomba connected to the internet.
Yeah, so I have a Roborock, and it's quite sophisticated, and I love their app.
Wow.
And there's also open source software for people who don't want a cloud-enabled robot, because people don't want, their inside of their house being sent off to a foreign country, which is valid.
No, these are the trade-offs, right? Because if everything has to happen on the device itself and it has limited compute because of how it's being manufactured, it really limits what it can do, what it can see, how it can see, right? It's maybe not doing some of the sensor data might not be leveraged for each one of the capabilities. So for example, it might have that LiDAR or time of flight sensor, but it might only be used for detecting ledges and making sure it doesn't fall down the stairs or get trapped under a couch that it might not fit under. There's a lot of options. I think there's just been a lot of innovation in the last even 5 years on what sensors and computing and, there's also this challenge of like, hey, maybe your Roomba has like a perfect SLAM-based map of your house, so it kind of knows where things are. But it's like making that new every day. It's not doing any kind of predictive forecasting of like, hey, this was here, this was there, or even having the knowledge of like, this is a movable object versus a fixed structure. So even our understanding of the world could be incomplete in making your device seem pretty dumb.
And I want to expand one of your acronyms there. You just said a SLAM-based map. Like if you just threw it out, like everyone would know that. Simultaneous localization and mapping, right? So this is how to map an unknown environment. Talk about that, because I know it's doing that kind of work.
Yeah, so basically it'll walk around, zoom around, kind of taking, I think a lot of people use lasers nowadays, calculating the distance between itself and other, I think we call them like landmarks in the environment, and assess like, hey, I think I'm here. And in relation to whatever surface this laser is bouncing off of, I'm going to draw a boundary that this might be an edge or a wall. And it will go around this environment as many times as needed to form a complete map. So if you think about like a top-down map that you might use, not even at the fidelity of like a Google Maps, but like something like a pirate map level, right? So like outlines and the edges, honestly, that's essentially what you get out of SLAM. Now, what you can do is really pair that map with some of the other sensors on the robot, like these sensors that track how many rotations the wheel has had, like using the odometer. Combining a lot of this information, you can know where you are in the environment and where these landmarks that you're running into might be. So yeah, a lot. That was a really innovative solution for getting navigation indoors. All of this falls apart, obviously, as things move in the environment or as we step outside your front door and go into the real world. Yeah, it's pretty tough.
It's so interesting, the having conversations about something like a robot with someone like you who knows what they're talking about, and then trying to explain it to like a non-technical friend or parent. Because when you were saying like the number of rotations of the wheel, I'm imagining myself, pretend you're blind, you close your eyes, you know that your foot is a foot long, you put your hands out in front of you and you walk around. But if your foot slips once, you're off by a foot.
Yeah.
And if the wheel slips on the Roomba because it hit something slippery, now it completely is off. So the rest of the map is off by this, but then it
Yeah.
has to self-correct. It's really interesting math.
It really is. And honestly, I think what is one of the most exciting and endearing aspects of robotics to me is that in your example, people have no conscious sense of how they navigate the world. They completely underestimate all the parts of their brains and the proprioception and blah, blah, blah that goes into us being able to navigate the world. The Roomba only seems dumb because we underestimate what intelligence is, which honestly has yet to be defined. But when you try to quantify these things, it gets really challenging. But what I love is that it helps me to pursue a deeper understanding of the world, of physics, of my body and other bodies like animals and nature, and really figure out what we can learn from these precedents that have been set by the world around us.
Yeah. You use one of my favorite words, proprioception, right? This idea of kinesthesia, the ability to, like, for example, walk on a path of uneven stones. It just works. Like, we just do it. And babies can do
Yeah.
it within a couple of years of life. And
Yeah.
robots still have trouble with that.
It's so true. It's like, that Pin the Tail on the Donkey is a great game that I like to use to explain to people like why people can be so good at that. They really understand where they are in the world relative to themselves and other things in the environment. Yeah, so robots really do struggle with that. They struggle with interpreting what they see and understand based on the limited sensors, and not all of the sensors are given the same fidelity. It's like today we have these super high definition photos that our phones are able to take, and some robots don't have the ability to process that large volume of data or make smart inferences or guesses based on that data. So they're working on ones and zeros, my friends. Have
The
empathy.
I know you should have some empathy, but it's funny though, because if you look at like Reddit and any of the like robot vacuum Reddits, people are like, my robot's so dumb. Like, for example, literally day before yesterday, one of my sons left the door shut to their bedroom, and somehow the robot has decided that they live in a different house. So like the door was shut once, and now the
Yeah.
robot just sits there and goes, computer says no. Like, I can't get over there. And I walked it. It was like taking a dog that didn't want to like go down the stairs. And I was like, you can go. You can. The door is open. The robot said, no, it's not. Door is shut.
There's just too much risk of it violating its understanding of reality. You can think about it as like a irrational fear, right? But it's only acting on the information that exists in its hard drives. We as humans, we can accept variance and change like pretty quickly when it comes to some things, but just robots aren't always that flexible.
Yeah.
And I think that, what an area that I got really passionate about when I was at Google was human in the loop, right? That, you would never just leave your toddler out and say, hey, yeah, why don't you just explore the world and figure it out? Why don't you just put everything in your mouth and do that? We learn a lot that way, but there's a lot of coaching and mentoring that goes into human development. And I think robotics is in the same realm. So if you went into your app that controls and supports your robot, you could probably say, hey, I think you got the wrong idea. Refresh the map. Walk around again and see what reality truly is. Or there's been a problem. Why don't you check again? If you could verbally communicate or nudge the robot to do the right thing, it would be able to learn easily. But just like you said, you change the environment, it goes, that's different. Let me look again. And then its assumptions are incorrect.
Yeah. And that showcases, I think, the gap between the hardware, which might be ready, and the software, which is way farther away than we think.
Yeah.
As you said, there's sensors that it has that we might not be using fully.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are sensors that it could use that we don't have a digitized version of it, like smell. Smell is still something, an underutilized sense that we're not leveraging in robotics. Touch. We might have like force, right? There are like force torque sensors, like or bump sensors or things like that can tell us when there's been contact. But what degree of contact, what temperature of contact, what is the texture of that contact? Is something slipping out of my hand? Do I have a decent grip on it? These types of things, there are only early prototypes and models of getting this type of feedback from the environment for a computer. And then once you get that feedback, you have to figure out, how do I integrate that into all of the other knowledge that I know? How much do I weight that input of how hot something is to whether or not I should or can pick it up?
Tell me if you think that this analogy works or this is a story that you can relate to, because I'm going to guess based on your personality, that when you bring your grocery bags from the back of the car to the house, you are like, I am not doing this in two.
Yeah, one
I am
trip
not doing
mentality.
one
Come
trip.
on.
So then you're like, okay, I've got this many knees and I've got 10 fingers and I'm going to like, and then the ability to hold all of these things and not have them slip.
Yeah.
That is, I always think to myself, what an interesting robotics problem.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
robot would totally
Dynamics.
get like just the milk and go, and then just the chips and then go. But I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm going to go and make more than one trip. But I'm like, it would be impossible to imagine what kind of algorithm would be involved to go and
Yeah.
get all of those things
I'm,
on
I'm
just two hands.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to put my big product manager hat on and also my accessibility hat. So when I think about what a human can do, I don't always think that is the best way. Honestly, we have to take our little narcissistic hats off and really think about, is there another way that that task could have been done, right? Because when you were at the grocery store, you could have put all the groceries in a cart, and that cart could have been really easy for a forklift or a two-hand robot to pick up that entire cart, rather than you having the expectation that it has to weasel its arms and end effectors through all those tiny little paper bag loops and all that tension, right? So there are ways that we can adapt to wanting to integrate AI and robotics into our lives. And so I really love what happened. I think it's the 35th anniversary of the kind of ADA laws in the US. And so all of these things like curb cuts of alternative feedbacks of like lights for our fire alarms, all these different things are actually really beneficial in robots being able to not have to fit our expectations of them, but for us to make adjustments in our world so that they can help us.
That's a good reminder, because sometimes I'll be watching a movie or I'll be looking in the mirror and I'll just go, hey, man, we're some funny looking people. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what a weird decision it was to have the thumbs oriented this way.
No, really. I mean, even in school, I left hand when I write, but I'm right hand dominant for almost every other activity. And
Same.
and yeah, and so like even living in a world where you're like, wow, 95% of scissors weren't made for me, or like doors open in an awkward direction, or like I can eat and brush my teeth with different, it's just a very strange world. But these assumptions that we make based on how we think people are supposed to be, we put these expectations on devices that are a tenth or 1% as intelligent or dynamic and flexible as we are, and then we call them stupid. So,
Mm.
yeah.
So we have this funny little disc that runs around the house and vacuums. We don't have really good, I would think it's a fair statement, commercially available clothes folders. But I've seen some non-humanoid robots, like Hello Robot has a really cool open source robot that's effectively a Roomba with a really long stick and then a long arm. They call it a manipulator.
Mhm.
Do you think that we're going to see, what are we going to see first? A bunch of little tiny Roomba-like individual devices, or something in the middle that's a non-humanoid robot? Or are we going to see one of these, like the billionaire walking around robots in a suit, iRobot
No,
style?
that's a great question. I mean, when I was growing up, the movie that really stuck out to me was Bicentennial Man with Robin
Oh,
Williams. That's just like
oh my
full helper
gosh.
robot. I'm telling you, my career wouldn't be where it was if I didn't have such a lofty vision as something to aspire to over the next, 50 to
Oh
80
my
years
god.
of my life. So like, yes,
So good.
I want to say, yes, Scott, that's what we're going to get. And it's going to be here in 24 months. But I can't say that that's true, right? I think that we have so much to learn incrementally, and a lot of what you see on these humanoid robots is a lot of demos, and you're not seeing the caveats of like how much was this video sped up, under what conditions was this demo accomplished. There's not a lot of transparency about, is this robot teleoperated or operated by someone in a computer far away, or is this a fully autonomous being? These types of things aren't exposed, so it's really hard to judge how far that technology is. And when I see that lack of transparency, I always just have to assume this isn't what I think that it is. So
Mm.
I really think it's a much more promising, the type of work that Hello Robot and others are doing to find a robot, pick a very precise domain, and get super effective at doing that. And then relying on something that we call transfer learning, right? The ability to take some of the skill sets and some of the tips and tricks that you've learned from one task and apply it to another. So, for example, I was thinking about, hey, what if we had a robot that could actually like move your vacuum around? Right? Instead of a Roomba, move your vacuum around and learn how to navigate it across what is a horizontal surface. And then we take that learning and we say, okay, robot, now paint my wall, because it's a very similar motion to vacuuming, just on a vertical surface. And so I really see, skills being transferred to things like that. But I'm not saying that we don't need to work on, I'll say some like unifying infrastructure, right? Some like master brain that can, understand which skill do I need to pull out of my toolbox in the way that our brains do today. But yeah, it's a lot of work. So become a STEM person and join us in the fight to make smarter robots that help people.
One of the things that I said recently about large language models that if you are a curious person, then it will be like putting on an Iron Man suit, and then you'll just be running around, and your brain is going to. But if you're incurious and you don't ask the kind of questions that you're asking, then it could end up making you less smart because you're just going to depend on it too much. I've heard a lot of people thinking that VLLMs, very large language models, are going to be the kick in the pants that robotics need. But they don't think about the small models, the small vision models and things like that. People are saying, why don't you just hook ChatGPT up to the
Yeah.
robot?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think it will definitely help, but I just don't think it's the end of it, right? So to your point, if it came to having a conversation with the robot, like strictly dialogue with no like embodied action, then like, yeah, let's totally get ChatGPT into every robot. Like I wish my Google Home or my Alexa had, the capabilities to level up information for me in the same way that ChatGPT does. But like I mentioned, it's that gap of turning words into actions. Humans have this same challenge. Okay, you've told me that you want me to make you a cup of mint tea and you want me to put it on your desk, but now I have to figure out, how do I break that down into smaller tasks? How do I physically achieve those tasks? And I'm reading this book. What is the name of it? It's called Living with Robots. And in this book, it's kind of saying that, a lot of what humans do is not just planning, but replanning. What happens if you're out of mint tea? What happens if I don't know how to put the faucet in? What happens if, in my mind, my timer is that the, kettle goes off in 3 minutes and it takes 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Like all of the changes and issues that come up during that plan, executing is quite challenging. And so I just don't think that those models are fully ready for that type of work, but people are working on it.
I've seen some really interesting diagrams where they're talking about, again, it's a little bit egotistical here. They're modeling the human brain where like, okay, this part of the brain would be that model and this part of the brain would be that model. So then rather than some kind of use a model as a super brain, it's like, this is in charge of just the touch of the hands and this model. So like a mixture of experts.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to work. I think it also just gives you the opportunity to evaluate, again, product manager hat, evaluate what success metrics look like for that skill, and then really figuring out how those metrics integrate into the success of a task, right? If you can't see, if you can't feel, if you can't do those things effectively, then the risk of or the potential of that task being accomplished is very, very low. It also lets you know where are the problems, like what system might be at fault if something fails, right? If I miss grasping something, is it because I didn't see it or I didn't reach far enough or whatever it happens to be? So it makes the experience a little bit more, oh, I forgot the word for it, less of a black box, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Easily auditable, yes, and that is something when we're using machine learning that is very, very tough to have, right? It's often this black box that we're like, "I'm gonna give you inputs, you're gonna give me outputs. I don't care what they are as long as they're the ones that I was expecting." So, yeah, I think with a collection of models, it's a little bit easier to interpret, but you still need that central decision-making algorithm in the end.
Have you seen, you remember in the movie Interstellar, there was TARS, which is the giant flat robot it looks like a slab, like a monolith, and it walks. Someone made a thing called GP TARS, where they made a little tiny TARS that walks around and it's plugged into ChatGPT, and the person
So
is.
cool. I saw Johnny 5 on Reddit, actually.
See,
You
people
remember that
doing this kind of
robot.
stuff. I had a young person on who has a robot that she made that is open source that helps teach indigenous languages. We're seeing more people
Wow.
put robots on their shoulder like a parrot.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
very cool.
that brings me to the question around augmentation
Mm.
versus automation, because there are things you might want to automate, like the company that you work at, Escape, has automatic massage platforms. And then there's personal augmentation, like I guess on exoskeletons are really having a moment right now.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of augmentation where possible. I think automation takes a depth of task analysis that most companies are not willing to do. just fully understanding every single thing that goes into that, all the intricacies and dependencies. It's really tough. But to give someone a superpower to say, hey, what is the job part of your job that you hate the most? Or what's the piece of it that is taking up the most time that might be the most valuable to get rid of? And really helping them do that, right? Like one of my favorite augmentation solutions is Reclaim, right? That will just like shuffle your calendar around so that you have a break for lunch, or that your one-on-one with your mentee doesn't get too far off in the week. So really taking something off your plate that you don't have to worry about. Can you override it? Of course. Can you tell it to ignore certain meetings? Absolutely. You remain in control, but the goal is that it's focused on achieving a task that you no longer desire to do.
Yeah, we call that toil at work. If it
Yes.
focuses on removing toil, like you just mentioned, reclaim.ai,
Right.
plug it into your Outlook or your Google, and it does it without training any data on your stuff. It's doing it with local models.
Yeah.
Um, I like the idea of it taking the most tedious parts of my
Mhm.
life. I'm working on the boring parts of running a podcast.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like one of the things that I think the people who listen to the show are very well known is that I don't do well at show notes. I'm the worst. I will say, I'm going to go ahead and put that in the show notes. Like you just mentioned a book. And I'm like, oh yeah, Living with Robots with Ruth Aylett and Patricia
Yes.
Vargas. I will add it to the show notes. No one is ever going to, I'm never going to do that. So I'm working on some automations that will do the transcripts, validate those, Google with Bing or whatever, find the book and
Yeah.
add show notes. Like, because
Oh,
I
that's
hate that part of the
amazing.
job.
That's amazing. See, I've got a platform that I just started using. I think it's based out of the UK called Jamie, and it's a note taker for the background. It's a botless platform that allows me to get notes from meetings that I'm in that are for my own personal use, but without kind of inviting that bot person to the meeting, which can be very awkward and really change the way people communicate when they feel like they're being supervised. That platform will summarize the notes for me, assuming that all of my things that I'm recording are quote unquote meetings. But what
Mm.
you're saying is like, hey, I wish I could take that bot and actually tell it this isn't a meeting. This is a podcast. These are show notes. And so when I reference materials, put it in this kind of format. Or even, hey, here's a predefined, Word template, and I want you to cull my notes into this format because that's how I like my show notes styled. And that is like the refinement that we get to do with these LLMs. That's what I love about these technologies recently is there's so much more personalization that we can put in there versus some of the older things that we were doing, even like image classification type of tools in the past, where they're like, I recognize these things and these things only. And to add anything to these things, it requires a whole bunch of technical engineering work to get that boosted. So I really appreciate that piece of it.
Yeah, it feels like this. We're hearing this term agentic a lot, and we're going to
Yeah.
talk about it at all the everyone's going to be talking about agentic, and it's just like in the old days, I would have just wrote a bash script and ran a cron job, and I know it's me going against what I usually say, which is don't say just because it minimizes work, but little tiny augmentation tasks that reduce toil, that always has a human in the loop to get the tedium and the gross parts of my job, like weekly reports
Yeah.
and newsletters and stuff like that.
No, that makes sense. What I remember from school are the 3Ds of robotics, and it was really kind of a guiding light of the types of things we should be attempting to create solutions for. And that's dull, dirty, and dangerous, right? These are bottom of the
Mm.
barrel tasks. When it comes to dull, that's what I would say is your toil, these boring things like meeting notes and filtering emails and stuff like that. And then dirty, right? This is like exploring the ocean or sorting our trash or some of these things that are even like distributing COVID vaccines, distributing them, not administering them to people's bodies, but distributing them, these dangerous things that are high risk for human beings. These are the types of things that a lot of the things that, in the beginning I wanted to work on because of the limitations of technology were great. But now that I'm working in the wellness tech space, where does massage fit? Is it dull?
See,
Is it
so
dirty?
so this is the thing. So when I started researching what Escape does, I was thinking to myself, well, gosh, there's some really talented people that do really talented work, and I wouldn't want to take that work away from them. But then there are also people who might need a massage every single day, or someone has lymphedema. They
Absolutely.
might need massage 3 times a day. And it's not reasonable, nor is it feasible for them to go and have a person do that. So I
Yeah.
think two things can be true.
Yeah, I agree. And I definitely see us more in the augmentation camp, right? Like when I think about kind of the physical stress, the demands on a human being to deliver high quality massage to, 10 plus appointments per day, like their careers can be really limited by their
Yeah.
physical pressure. And so if we can extend that by even just I'll do the warm up part of the massage and you do the deep sensitive work between the tendons. Like we can collaborate and be a team. So
Hmm.
collaborative robotics is something that maybe you see in picking and packing in a factory and things like that, but bringing it into the intimacy of the real world where we're like physically sharing work and a dynamic space is so exciting.
Yeah, the idea that a one robot arm and plus a person, that's augmentation. But then in trying to sell a thing which is like masseuses are no longer needed, because I
Yeah,
have a
I know.
massage chair that I got many, many years ago and I'm very happy with. I do not feel like it replaces a
Yeah.
masseuse.
It's not a massage vending machine. Do you know what I mean? And even a vending machine
Exactly.
is reliant on a human to restock it. So maybe that's not even a great example, but yeah, there's something that technology will never bring, right? That social intimacy, those conversations, the
Hmm.
relationship you build with your therapist, your masseuse, and like we're under no mistake that we're not, ultimately replacing that, but really learning from that experience, making it feel safe, making it feel comfortable. Like these are things that um, we're trying to proliferate in a lot of our technology. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's step by step.
All right. So my last question as we head out, because you've been doing this for so long, what would you recommend if someone is listening and they are either an adult who is interested in the space, or maybe they have young people in the space? Do they go and build a Raspberry Pi tank, or what platform do they play with?
Oh man, there are so many. There are so many. I really love Adafruit. It's a great website with a lot of projects that you can do out of the box. If you're, I would say, like maybe high school and college level, they have kits with step by step instructions. They have videos on YouTube. It's really great. And then there's KiwiCo if you've got kids like middle school and below, like even up to 5 years old. I'm actually in their robot coder starter kit that really helps you develop a career in robotics without any code, right? Really understanding what is path planning, what are sensors, different things like that. And then I would say if you are like high school or college level and above, there's platforms like Udacity and Coursera that have amazing programs that were co-developed with leading AI and technology companies, really helping you grow job-ready skills, right? I actually teach a course on Udacity for AI product management that a lot of people have taken, not because they want to go out in the field, but just to better understand the industry and better understand how they might influence the direction that it goes, either as a creator or even as a consumer. So those would be some of my resources. There's definitely more on my website. I'm a huge proponent of STEM education in general. So organizations like Black Girls Code or code.org also have a lot of great resources, whether you're a student or an educator.
So cool. Thank you so much for chatting with me today,
No,
Jasmine.
thanks for having me and thanks for letting me just wax poetic about my passions.
Absolutely. I will hopefully get the show notes updated, but if I don't, you can always go to jasminelawrence.com and take a look at her portfolio. Also, take a look at her. Sometimes she has STEM scholarships and
Mhm.
things as well, and links to all the things that we've been talking about. This has been another episode of Hanselminutes, and we'll see you again next week.